I'm here with Alexander Mercurs, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's focus on the Turkish economy and the Lira crisis. What does Erdogan need to do to solve this crisis? What are the implications for the world economy, and what are the implications specifically for Europe? Because this could morph into a Eurozone crisis as well. So what's going on in Turkey with the Lira?
You're absolutely right on all counts. I mean, first of all, we've got to go back a couple of months to when the Turkish Lira crisis really began, which is at the beginning of 2018. It got much worse in the summer. Now, the reason that happened is because the way President Erdogan has been running the Turkish economy is by borrowing very, very heavily from Western banks and financial institutions in Western currencies and using the money to run a major infrastructure program and building program in Turkey itself. This has led to an overheated economy with very high inflation, currently running around 20% a year, and a very, very large trade deficit, which Turkey is only able to cover by going on borrowing. Now, whenever we see signs in the larger world economy of things beginning to go bad, Turkey becomes extremely vulnerable. So back in the summer, and the Federal Reserve Board in the United States was raising interest rates, and Erdogan found himself in a quarrel with the United States over an American pastor that he'd arrested, and the result was that led to a major crisis in the lira. Now we see a general slowdown in the world economy, which appears to be gathering pace. Erdogan is once again arguing with the US, this time over the S-400 buy from Russia. And again, we see more pressure on the lira. To add to the trouble, President Erdogan has been very unwilling to take proper steps to balance the economy in Turkey by raising interest rates, which have drained confidence away. What he needs to do is to increase interest rates more, meet up with his friends in various countries like Qatar, Russia, China, and the rest, try to cut back spending and accept that there will have to be a period of time when Turkey will need to accept a short period of recession in order to balance out the books. That's what he needs to do. He has consistently shown an unwillingness to do it. Now, as to the problems with the Eurozone, what one has to understand is that Eurozone banks are themselves in a very bad financial shape. The Eurozone economy is slowing down fast. There are growing signs of recession. Italy is already in recession. Germany may be. France soon will be. And it's very easy to see how problems in Turkey, which has borrowed heavily from European banks, which, as I say, are not in good shape, could very easily tip over into a greater crisis in the Eurozone also. So this is a serious issue, and it looks like it's going to get worse because the policy response in Turkey is not a good one, and the general condition of the world economy is not strong, and the Turkish economy suffers from very severe imbalances, which President Erdogan has taken no step to repair.
So the big banks that are involved in Turkey are from the Netherlands, France, and Italy. Yes. So they're heavily exposed.
They're heavily exposed.
Right, to the Turkish debt.
And Turkey is a big economy. I mean, it's a G20 economy. So we're not talking about a small economy here. And at a time when there's already stresses within the banking system in Italy, and as everybody knows, banks in Greece and Spain are not in very good shape either. The Eurozone absolutely doesn't need a crisis in Turkey as well. It's about the worst thing that could happen at this time.
So why is Erdogan not doing anything about this? Is this about his favorability? Is this a political reason that he's not doing anything?
I think politics play a very big role in all of this. There's local elections going on in Turkey. I think he feels politically vulnerable. I think he feels that if he starts taking steps to slow the economy and imposing austerity in Turkey, that could increase political opposition to him. I mean, it would do. I mean, of that I am sure. But I think also there is a visceral side. Erdogan is a Muslim. I think he finds the whole idea of interest obnoxious. Interest is something which, of course, is prohibited in Islam. So I think there is that side also. And I think last but not least, Erdogan is someone who likes to see the big economic numbers. He likes to have an economy that's growing at 6% a year. I think that makes him feel powerful and strong. And I think he is far too willing to think of slowdowns in the Turkish economy as a sign of weakness for Turkey and for himself, and as a sign of conspiracy against Turkey, against all sorts of people. I mean, one of the things he's now trying to do, he's imposed, in effect, a form of exchange controls, which has stopped Western financial institutions in dealing in liras. Now, that did briefly strengthen the lira, but it's exactly the sort of thing he does, which undermines confidence of foreign investors in Turkey at a time when he needs them, but is very characteristic of his conspiratorial way of thinking, which is to see any fall in Turkish growth rates or any problems in the Turkish economy as a symptom of some kind of a plot against Turkey.
How much of this lira crisis is due to the U.S. hand as a sort of punishment to Turkey for the S-400 deal, for the fact that it is starting to move away from the Western alliance and moving more towards the Russia, Chinese, Iran axis? How much of this can Erdogan lay at the feet of the United States and the U.S. financial system?
Right. Well, first of all, he is putting the blame on the US and the US financial system. I mean, that's what he's going around saying to everybody in Turkey during this election period. And I am sure that at some level he's right. It's always difficult to put your finger exactly on what is going on. But I'm pretty sure that the people in the Treasury Department in Washington and in the Federal Reserve Board and elsewhere are making quite sure that Turkey is going to feel some pain as a result of its distancing itself from the United States, and it's going with Russia for the S-400 sale. I've no doubt that there is part of that. But it's always important to say in these situations that Turkey is a big country. It should not be vulnerable to this kind of pressure from the US. That it is vulnerable is a consequence of the way in which Erdogan has managed the Turkish economy, which is basically a policy of growth at all costs.
And of course, coupled with Brexit, this Turkish lira crisis and the exposure of the European banks to Turkey, this is not a good sign. This could very well be a signal that an economic downturn, an economic storm may be heading Europe's way.
Absolutely. Now, can I just say, I think that the problems in Turkey in the immediate term are much more serious for the EU economically than Brexit. I think that at least in the short term, they'd be able to handle a Brexit if a Brexit happens at all, which is at this moment in time that we're speaking far from certain. But the very last thing they need is a financial crisis in Turkey, which spreads into the European financial system. I come back to what we said. The banks in Italy are in a very, very bad shape. The banks in Spain and Greece are in very, very bad shape. The Eurozone economy, the European economy, is slowing and is probably on the brink of recession. And there is already recession in large parts of it, possibly in Germany, certainly in Italy, and before long in France. The very last thing they need at the moment is a crisis in Turkey.
All right. Alexander McCurse, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. We really appreciate it. And in the description box down below, you'll find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages. Please donate to us. That also helps us out a lot. You can also get a copy of this video in audio format. Go to SoundCloud and iTunes and follow us there. Also go to theduran.com and see all the articles that Alexander is linking up to every day. Alexander McCurse, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you once again. Until next time, take care.